Well, welcome. Thanks for joining our presentation. We'll start off with some facts and figures, and afterwards we'll proceed in a panel discussion. Let me start by introducing myself very shortly. I'm Simone. I am from Holland, and I live in Den Bosch at the moment. Studied at Tilburg University, did a business degree there, and afterwards a finance master. And I proceeded my career at Team Rockstars IT, where I was CEO for 4 years, and then had two beautiful daughters. You can see them in the right, twins. Actually, will be turning 2 next month. And when I came back from maternity leave, I started in my role as a chief HR. And first came across this subject because even though I had been CEO for a few years, I never really gave any attention to the fact that we had very few female developers in our company. And maybe perhaps because we are the girls, you're going to think about how their future will be and in which area they will be employed later on. And when you see so little women in the IT sector, I think it's really important to think about why that is and what consequences that has. So let me start to take you with me in a few facts and figures. I'm not sure if you're all familiar with this, but this is a Stack Overflow survey of this year. Worldwide, I think almost 65,000 people fill it in, and only a small percentage is female, not even 8%. So quite little. And you can see it starts very early on. This is a stat of the European IT studies, in which Holland, unfortunately, is at the bottom with only 6% of female students. So almost no girls in the IT studies, in which EU averages are about 17%, which is also not very good. It's really nice to see that Bulgaria, Belgium, Greece are doing quite well and even above 30%. So we can also learn a lot from that. So that's interesting to see, and it's unfortunate that the Netherlands is not doing that good at the moment. Furthermore, I think two other stats are really important. The last stats, then we'll proceed. You can see that in the last 30 years, computing roles have of course skyrocketed. The tech industry is going fast, and all other jobs are also have also increased somewhat, but not quite as much as the tech roles. If you join the gender pay gap with this information, which unfortunately means that women still earn about 90% less than the men per hour, so not as per hour. If then you know that if we don't open up the jobs in the tech industry for women, then it will be even harder to close the gender pay gap. So I think that's also important to take into account in this subject. Why does it matter to have male and female developers or IT professionals? You could say, well, if more men are interested than women, why should we care? Well, I think multiple reasons that it's important. Almost every study that you find about diversity in teams, and that goes further than gender, it also goes about cultural background or age differences, is that diversity leads to better decision making, better results in companies. So this is one example of the McKinsey report that the Harvard Business Review published, but you can find a lot of them. And also, a really important recent study from Accenture is that if women start in tech industry, half of them will leave the industry by the age of 35. So that's usually largely because of the problem that they are in a minority, and that's has quite a lot of consequences. So when I did my study the last 1.5 years, I spoke to a lot of female IT professionals. I will take you with me to some quotes to give you an image of what is happening. One of the developers I spoke to said, well, I was actually the only one in my study group as a girl, and none of the boys really knew how to get along with me. If you're 18 or 19, that can be quite hard also. Another female IT manager I spoke to, told me that when she had a meeting with the supervisory board and walked in the room, the president of the board took his glasses off and said, well, I have to get used to the fact that you're a woman. So that's quite difficult to start off with your presentation. And I also spoke to a lot of male developers who said, well, I'm so used to having all-guy teams that when a woman joins our team, it's quite awkward. How do I have to behave? Of course, that's a problem of the team at that moment, but that's what happens when there's such a small group of women in a certain area. And of course, it's also, if you're a woman, the only women in a team or a company, it's really nice to have other. You miss having other women around for lunch, for drinks. So the vicious cycle, the circle that some teams, some companies are in, and probably not every case this is true, but usually when it's a non-diverse team and somebody's female developer, for example, is hired, it's hard to feel at home because you're the only one, and then a doubt can arise about the culture fit of the female developer, and usually next hire is then based on similarities with the team. So then a non-diverse team will even more exist. So we have to break this cycle. Also, shortly, I wanted to discuss with you that we have a lot of positive things happening. VHCO, who is encouraging girls to go to engineering studies. We have a female tech heroes networking agreement in the Eindhoven Brainport. Codam is a programming school in Amsterdam with over 30% of female students, and there's a lot of books for girls who have role models to go into engineering studies. So that's also really good. So I know we have a large audience of male today. So I have some suggestions for how you can help with this issue. First of all, educate yourself, make better decision making about decision making in teams, but also the gender pay gap. Talk to women in your environment. Start a conversation with your colleagues, female colleagues, but also other ones. How can everybody be included? Talk to management about female-friendly work environments. Are there female role models in your website? How can you improve the facilities? And of course, stimulate girls to pursue a career in IT. So maybe your daughter or niece or the girl next door, tell them about your profession and how you love it. And I think that will be a great thing for them to hear. So finally, when we started off, we only had 3% female developers. So we want to make sure in a few steps we are going to the 30% by promoting IT studies, educating departments, and creating the supportive environments. Thanks so much. Now we'll proceed on this subject by doing a discussion with Yvonne and Kamini. Hi, Kamini. Thanks for joining us.
Hello. Hi.
So this is a subject that a lot of people and companies talk about. Kamini, why do you think it's important to have this discussion?
Well, it just is as fundamental as having diverse viewpoints produces better decisions. So at every level of an organization, bringing that diversity in and ensuring that not only do you focus on bringing the diversity in, the whole inclusion aspect of it is actually making everyone with a different viewpoint feel that they can bring their best selves to work. So it's just fundamentally sound business sense to bring that diversity of viewpoint into it. So, and again, if you just look at your customers are diverse by definition. And if you're not reflecting that in your own organization, you could potentially be, a lot of you could be blindsided. You could be following a track that isn't completely reflective of what your customers are asking for.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. I also think that having a diverse team allows you to get different perspectives. Like having a diverse team brings so much more to the table than just having different backgrounds. But different backgrounds also bring different perspectives on things. And while you have a different perspective, you can bring new ideas to the table. And this is how innovation happens, right? So it's super important to have a diverse team if you want to the market and get those new ideas and innovation happening in your company.
Thanks so much. Yes, I completely agree. And I think it's really important that we get the broad perspective on the issues that we are encountering. As women in the tech sector, did you encounter any challenges yourself in your career so far? Kamini, sorry.
Okay, let me start. So I've been in the industry for a few years now, and I must say that it depends on where you are in your own trajectory as an individual, from the perspective of the family that you have. You know, for those who choose to have children, where that childbearing age fits into the picture. So I must say that some of the most basic challenges have been around, some of the expectations that you face, and I must say that most of those expectations are actually more environmental as opposed to expectations that I've actually felt within my own immediate surroundings of my family or my employer. But yeah, just having to answer questions that, to be honest, some of my male colleagues don't have to answer. So it's pretty basic. Other than that, obviously, it's not just this is not specific only to the tech industry. This is specific to women that might be in looking to pursue a full-time job in any industry. But I think it's a little bit exacerbated in the tech industry simply because potentially there's a lack of role modeling, and there are some biases that it's talking about unconscious biases that might creep in, that you end up having to deal with some of these microaggressions on a daily basis, while in other cases that basically is a burden that you don't face.
And you told us about the biases. What did you experience on that part?
Around, I will generally state that there are obviously biases that creep in when people assume how many hours you can or you're willing to spend on your work. And I'm again not speaking about it specifically because a lot of these I have overcome over the last years by simply proving yourself, right? And then there's no question of whether you can do the job or not. It's just a question of just having the conversation and getting on with it. But earlier on, if this bias creeps in as to whether someone is in a position to dedicate time because they have a young family at home, that is just a wholly unnecessary bias, because you don't have the same question being asked of male counterparts.
And this is an important part of the inclusion discussion as well, right? I've had, I don't want to say many times, but unfortunately it is many times where I've went to a client or a customer in a setting where I was going to advise them on their technical architecture, and you come into the room and people assume that you're the salesperson or you're I've had questions of people, oh, and you're in marketing or in recruitment. The assumptions that are being made about what you can do because of what you look like or what your gender is, that's quite intense. It's quite intense to deal with because you feel like you haven't been able to just be taken at face value, right? You have to prove yourself already.
Yeah, I can imagine if you start off with a meeting like that, it's difficult to have a good meeting. Then, yeah. And what do you think, if we want to break the cycle, what do you think would make more girls enroll in IT studies? Yvonne, do you have thoughts about that?
I saw this question up front, of course, and I thought it was quite funny because I have not studied IT, computer science, or anything like that. I've studied Spanish language and culture, and I'm completely self-educated in the IT front. So I thought, am I the right person to answer this question? And maybe actually, yes, I am, because I was very interested in computers and everything to do with it already when I was very young. Like, this is the 80s, right? I've been in IT for a while. And so I was interested in computers. And when the time came to choose my degree, I didn't choose for computer science. While I did think maybe I should, and then I didn't. And I started wondering, of course, later why that would be. Why did I choose something else? And why didn't I pursue what I really liked? And I think one of the main things is that I felt like I wouldn't belong there. And that is so profound, that you think that you won't belong somewhere. And that comes wholly from having stereotypes about what it is like to be working in the IT field. And this was, quite a while ago, but I think this still holds true. The stereotypes of people working in IT is the white male, nerdy type, and that is absolutely not true, of course, but we need to get rid of these stereotypes and we need to provide better role models. And yeah, I think that those two things together, with having computer education be a part of the early education cycle. So provide computer education already in primary schools and high schools so that it becomes a daily skill, have like a basis.
A basis for young kids already. Yeah,
Exactly.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing your story. Yeah. And Kamini, as an executive yourself, what do you think would make more women make the step to leadership position in the tech industry?
I think role modeling is really important, role modeling as well as mentorship, but not just aspirational. So not just talking about, how many female CEOs we might have or how many, female board members a company might have, which is obviously super important, but just to help people make that step one at a time, right? And also giving opportunities at the early stage of one's career. So having this sort of continuous role modeling and mentorship, sometimes just a few paces out. So someone who is just a couple of years ahead of you, who can share their experiences that might be situationally a lot more relevant to where a person might be in their personal circumstances as well. So someone that is, just had a young family, also talking to younger women who might be aspiring to get to that same point and are wondering how to overcome these challenges. So I think that there's definitely a need for this continuous role modeling throughout the career of starting from a very early age all the way through to achieving senior leadership positions. I think the other thing that is super important is placing that bet on giving women that first management job. There is a McKinsey study that speaks about the broken rung, which is where a lot of women kind of slip away from being able to get into leadership positions because they don't get that first management role. So I think there's also a lot to be done just in terms of recognizing the potential just for what it is and giving those opportunities. Sponsorship
creating that,
in that sense. Exactly.
Creating that first step and mentorships, etc. Yeah. Thank you. Well, I just got a signal that we're almost done with our time, so I think we could have talked for hours about this subject. I think we want to invite everybody who wants to join our discussion to contact us, and I hope we get a lot of more time for this subject in the things that will come along. So. Thank you so much for joining Kamini and Yvonne, and for everybody that's listening. And I hope we'll talk soon about this important subjects.